Welcome to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. If this is your first time visiting the channel, feel free to introduce yourself in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is for you. And now just relax, get comfortable, listen to tonight's horror stories. My name is Mike, and I am 30 years old. At the end of 2024, I took a job working the morning shift at a Shell gas station on the outskirts of Cleveland, Ohio. I had to be at work by 6 a.m. every day, so I got used to waking up early, usually before 5. I had just moved into a small unit in a budget apartment complex on East 55th Street. It was a rundown building with peeling paint and walls so thin you could hear your neighbors sighing through the drywall. My apartment was on the second floor. My bedroom window looked straight down at the playground below. It was an old, depressing place with rusty swings and cracked seesaws where children rarely played. About a month after I moved in, I started noticing a strange routine. Every morning between 4 and 4:30 a.m., dry, heavy thuds would come from my ceiling, which was the floor of apartment 3B on the 3rd floor. Thump. Thump. Sometimes it sounded like something heavy was being slammed against the wall, followed by small vibrations that traveled down into my bed frame. At first, I just shrugged it off. I figured it was just the sounds of a heavy drinker or a couple that liked to argue. But the truly weird part was what happened immediately afterward. At exactly 5 a.m., a middle-aged man would appear in the playground. He always wore a thin white tank top, despite the bone-chilling Ohio winter. He would perform rhythmic aerobic exercises all by himself. Sometimes, he would even have a wide, beaming smile on his face, looking like he was having the time of his life. The routine was as steady as a clock. At 4:15, I'd hear the thumping on the ceiling. And at 5, the guy in the tank top would be in the yard exercising with a look of pure excitement. One morning, I felt genuinely uneasy. It was freezing cold and thick with fog. I looked down and saw the man wasn't exercising. He was just standing frozen in the middle of the playground, eyes wide and staring into nothing, his mouth moving as if he were praying or cursing. One afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Sam, a longtime neighbor who lived across the hall from me. I asked her about the family upstairs. "Do you know the people in 3B?" I asked as she struggled with her grocery bags. Mrs. Sam froze, and the look in her eyes changed instantly. "Don't worry about that. Getting involved only brings trouble," she said. "I'm just curious. Is there something wrong with them?" Mrs. Sam shook her head and added, "Young man, around here, people learn not to care too much about what's going on around them. Trust me." My curiosity about the family in 3B and the man in the playground was finally answered at the end of February 2025. That morning, I woke up, but I didn't hear the familiar thump on the ceiling. As I was getting ready to leave for work, red and blue lights from ambulances and police cars surrounded the apartment entrance. A crowd was gathered in the 3rd floor hallway. As I pushed through, paramedics were wheeling a stretcher out of apartment 3B. A body lay on it, covered from head to toe with a white sheet. Walking beside the stretcher was a man sobbing hysterically. I was shocked to realize it was the same man who always exercised in the playground. His face was beet red, tears were streaming down his cheeks, and he was clutching the stretcher, trying to pull it back. He cried out, his voice breaking, "Sarah, don't leave me!" I stood there, stunned. So he lived on the 3rd floor, right above me. His name was Robbie, and the woman on the stretcher was his wife. The police began to tape off the crime scene. They took statements from Mrs. Sam and others, and the tension in the air was suffocating. The incident in Robbie's family had the whole building buzzing. I still saw Robbie exercising after that day, but the energy and the joyful smiles were gone. He was quieter. More importantly, the noises from his apartment had stopped completely. But the truth has a way of revealing its cruelty. 2 days later, the police returned to arrest Robbie. As they handcuffed him, he sobbed, saying he didn't mean it and that it was just an accident. Through the whispers of neighbors and the investigation reports, I finally realized with horror what I had been witnessing all along. Robbie was a monster. He had a sick, twisted habit. Every early morning, he would demand intimacy from his wife. If Sarah refused because she was tired or sick, Robbie would fly into a rage. Those thumping sounds I heard every morning weren't the sounds of furniture moving. They were the sounds of Sarah's body being thrown against the walls, her head hitting the floor, or lamps being smashed to pieces. And the most disgusting part was the reason he went to the playground to exercise. After every brutal beating, Robbie felt his stress had been completely flushed away. He went to the playground to change his mood, to bask in the satisfaction of a man who had just asserted absolute power through violence. That radiant smile I saw through my window was the high he felt after torturing a poor soul. On the morning Sarah died, the injuries from years of abuse had finally caused her body to give out. A hard shove from Robbie caused her to hit her head on the edge of a table. This time, she didn't wake up to see her husband go down to the playground for his morning workout. Robbie was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to life in prison. Apartment 3B is empty now, but its silence is even more terrifying than the noises used to be. I am haunted by the fact that I unknowingly watched the routine of a crime take place every single day. I lived right next door to hell and thought it was just normal life. Now, every time I look out at the playground, I remember Robbie and his wide, creepy smile. Everything is covered in a layer of quiet gloom. The noises from upstairs are gone, but in my head, they still ring out as a reminder of the evil that lived silently above me. My name is Emma, and I am 27 years old. It sounds completely ridiculous, but I just ended my marriage because of a diaper. I am being dead serious. 8 months ago, I was living happily with my husband Michael in Austin, Texas. Our life was comfortable. We had just welcomed our first son Noah 3 months prior. Those first few months of parenthood were exhausting. Noah cried a lot in the middle of the night, but Michael was an amazing father. Even though he worked 10 hours a day, he was always happy to help me with the baby. I thought I was so lucky to have a man like him. Things started getting weird when I noticed Michael would disappear at night. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe he just needed some fresh air. But then it started happening almost every night. Around 2 in the morning, he would quietly slip out of bed. He would be gone for about 15 minutes, and then return to bed breathing heavily, looking strangely satisfied. I started to get suspicious. Was he seeing someone? Was he having an affair? I checked his phone several times when he wasn't looking, but I found absolutely nothing. I kept my doubts to myself, not knowing how to bring it up to him, until that one night. Around 2 a.m., Noah woke up screaming. I was exhausted, so I asked Michael to go soothe him. But the baby kept crying. When I opened my eyes, I realized my husband wasn't even in the room. I picked Noah up to go find him. As I walked past the window, I looked down into the backyard where we keep the trash cans. Under the dim glow of the streetlights, I saw Michael. He wasn't on the phone, and he wasn't meeting anyone. He was standing by the trash bin, digging through the plastic bags full of Noah's dirty diapers. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Michael pulled out a diaper and opened it up. It was a heavy diaper, one with poop in it. He held it right up to his nose, closed his eyes, and took a deep, long breath. The yard light hit his face, revealing a huge, blissful, and happy smile. He stood there inhaling that stench intensely, as if he were smelling expensive perfume or some kind of drug. My stomach turned over. Seeing my respectable husband, the perfect father to my child, indulging in something so perverted in the trash made me shake so hard I could barely stand. After a moment, I snapped out of it and hurried to put Noah back in his crib. When I looked back outside, Michael was gone. I rushed to bed and pretended to be asleep. A few minutes later, the door creaked open. Michael sneaked back in and crawled into bed next to me. I stayed still, trying to breathe steadily like I was in a deep sleep. From that night on, I couldn't sleep anymore. Fear and confusion kept me awake every night. I would lie there waiting, and every night, Michael repeated the exact same routine. Sneaking out, digging through the trash, and coming back like nothing happened. I needed proof to make sure I wasn't hallucinating or going crazy. So, I started filming him. I took photos and gathered over a dozen videos from the window. One night, I waited for him to come back from the yard. As soon as he got into bed, I flipped on the light. He jumped, looking at me with terrified eyes. I felt a wave of disgust and anger when I saw a faint yellow smudge still near his nose. "Where have you been for so long?" I asked. "Oh, I was just hungry, getting a snack," he said. He smiled and leaned in to kiss my cheek, but I pulled away instantly. I didn't say a word. I just opened a video on my phone and turned the screen toward him. Michael's face went from shocked to deathly pale, and finally to a scary, blank stare. "Explain this to me, Michael. What are you doing?" "Nothing. I was just cleaning up." The argument lasted until dawn. Michael wasn't sorry at all. He looked down at his feet for a long time and then said something that made my blood run cold. "You can't and will never understand. It's a need deep inside me that I can't control. You have no right to judge me." When I started crying and asked if this was some kind of twisted sexual fetish, he didn't deny it. Instead, he flew into a rage. He started throwing things and screaming that I was narrow-minded and that my judgment was the reason he could never be honest with me. That very night, he packed a bag and left for his brother's house. I thought he just needed time to think. I expected him to come back and apologize, or at least agree to go to therapy for Noah's sake. But he didn't. Just one day later, Michael called me with the coldest voice I've ever heard. "Emma, I want a divorce. My lawyer will be in touch." Every effort I made to save our marriage and every suggestion for mental health treatment was flatly rejected. He chose to protect his perversion over protecting his family. On the day we signed the divorce papers, I looked at the man who used to be my whole world and saw a terrifying stranger. I felt so much shame. When my mother asked why our happy family fell apart so fast, I could only hang my head and say, we had irreconcilable differences. How could I ever tell her the disgusting truth without feeling humiliated? I moved back in with my parents after the divorce was finalized. I look back at those last few months like a total nightmare. I tell myself to stay positive and forget the bad parts. I have to put my son's safety and well-being first. Noah deserves to grow up in a healthy environment. I deserve a better life too. And for my son, I will be strong. My name is Donnie. 5 years ago, when I was in college, I was fascinated by the deep web because of its absolute freedom and lack of censorship. Back then, accessing this underground world was becoming a trend at my school. Even though I had heard many horror stories about hackers and dark websites, I saw my friends using it normally, so I decided to give it a try. I asked a friend from my nerd circle to set it up for me. Since I didn't intend to do anything illegal, my friend said I didn't need high-level security software like Tails. Just changing my IP address would be enough. He warned me to always keep the hidden wiki on censored mode to avoid seeing things I shouldn't. The first 2 weeks were quite boring. I wandered around the hidden wiki, read some banned articles, or joined strange philosophy forums. I started to get cocky, thinking of myself as a true citizen of the dark web. One night, driven by a sick curiosity, I decided to go deeper into the dark sites. I turned off the censorship mode and started hunting for links. Eventually, I landed on a website called All the Gore. It was an incredibly massive chat room with a user list that seemed to go on forever. Topics flashed by like a news ticker, but after a few minutes, I realized what I was looking at wasn't normal conversation. The discussion thread titles made my blood run cold. Human hunting games, screams in the basement, cleaning the scene yourself. At first, I even laughed, thinking it was just a bunch of teenagers doing horror roleplay. That was until I read a post by someone named Culture. He began to recount details meticulously, like he was bragging about a trophy, from how he broke into a suburban home, hearing the gasps of a couple hiding under the bed, to the feeling of satisfaction when he landed the first knife strike. I don't know why I kept reading, but I read the whole thing. He claimed he had murdered the couple and kidnapped their daughter. I still didn't want to believe it, but then I scrolled down and saw a photo he had attached. It was a selfie, I think. He wore a plain, expressionless white mask. One hand held a little girl who was sobbing in total panic, and behind them were two bodies sprawled on the floor. He looked straight into the lens, his smile as joyful as if he had just finished a masterpiece. I immediately backed away from the computer. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. It was disgusting. In a blind fit of keyboard warrior rage, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I typed into the chat box, "You sick freaks. I took a screenshot. The police will find you and shut this trash heap down." Immediately the screen went pitch black. A green dialog box appeared. The username shown was admin. He typed, "Call the police and you will regret it." I reached for my phone, but as soon as I touched the screen, a message from a blank number popped up. "Call the police and you're dead." I froze. When I looked back at my laptop, I realized with a shock that the webcam light was on. I hadn't noticed when it started. My whole body went cold. Sweat began to pour even though the AC was on. On the screen, a photo appeared. It was me, sitting there holding my phone with a pale face. Someone was watching me right that second. In a panic, I covered the webcam with my hand. The screen quickly showed the next message from admin. "Put the phone down and uncover your webcam." I kept it covered. He typed, "Fine, have it your way." Then he leaked everything: my name, my address, and my exact dorm room. It would be a shame if Donnie and your college friends disappeared, wouldn't it? I didn't listen to him. I grabbed the laptop, rushed to my best friend's room on the same floor, and used his phone to call the police. When the police arrived, the website had vanished like a ghost. They seized my laptop, but found nothing except some junk files. They advised me to move temporarily. I stayed at the home of a friend named David. I taped over every camera, changed all my passwords, and lived in a state of extreme caution. Even though I tried to forget, I lived in constant fear and confusion. I taped over all the cameras on my phone and computer, but every time I used them, I still felt like someone was watching me. One afternoon, I returned to the apartment. David was at class. Just as I lay down on the bed, I heard a small noise. I held my breath and listened. Then another click, clearer this time, coming from the closet. I sat up fast, staring at the closet door that was slightly ajar. A second later, the closet door swung open. A man in a white mask stepped out and walked toward me. I didn't scream or think. I immediately turned and ran. I bolted down the stairs, out of the building, jumped in my car, and drove away in a total panic. When I returned later with the police, the man was gone. They did a quick check and left, telling me to rest, change my passwords, and lock my doors carefully. But when I returned to the bedroom, the computer turned on automatically. The wallpaper had been changed to a photo of a person wearing a mask, identical to the one I saw in the closet. He held a knife and pointed it forward. Next, a live stream software started up automatically. I couldn't close it no matter how hard I tried. The screen went black for a few seconds. Then a line of text appeared. "Welcome, Donnie." The live stream began. I saw a strange room. A dim light hit the face of a boy sitting in front of a screen, focused on something. Everything looked normal until the closet door behind him creaked open. A masked figure stepped out and approached. The boy turned around and was immediately attacked. My eyes were glued to the screen while my mouth unconsciously counted 11 times in total. It didn't stop there. He skillfully used other items like knives, scissors, and a chainsaw. In the chat box next to it, hundreds of people were cheering. Their comments were encouraging and praising, which made me nauseous. The live stream ended. In the chat box, Culture typed, "Thanks for watching, Donnie." I rushed into the bathroom and vomited violently. When I came back, my phone was vibrating nonstop. Messages from my parents, siblings, and friends. Everyone was asking why I sent them such a disgusting video. Those monsters had sent the live stream link to everyone in my contacts. My family thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was a pervert. My life was almost ruined in a few minutes. The police were called again. This time, they finally saw the severity of the case. They found a volume of strange data still sending signals from my seized computer. After weeks of investigation, the police finally announced the results. 4 men were arrested in a federal sweep, but they weren't the ones in the video. They were the ones who had cheered, donated money, and placed bets on each live stream. I read the news on my phone, not knowing if I should feel relieved or hopeless. The All the Gore site disappeared, but admin and Culture were never found. No one can say for sure that it was ever truly deleted. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, thinking about the boy in the live stream, the face of the little girl in Culture's photos, and all the other victims I don't know. And I wonder how many people out there are still accessing those sites. Finally, I want to advise you. If you have any intention of going on the deep web, stop right now. Don't be curious about what is hidden in the shadows, because once they see you, they will never forget. And some night, when you are sitting alone in your room, you will hear a click in your closet. And by then, it's too late. I never thought that installing security cameras would turn out to be the worst decision of my life. It all started when I moved into a small house on the outskirts of Salem, Oregon. My closest neighbor was almost half a mile away. It was just trees and an empty road all around. I felt I needed something to make me feel safer, so I decided to install cameras. I called the security company, and they scheduled a technician to come out that day. The installation went smoothly. The camera was mounted on the front door and connected to my phone. I felt more secure and adjusted to my new life pretty quickly. Except for the commute taking a bit of time, everything was fine. One day, I drove home after having too many drinks at my best friend's house, hoping to pass out on my own bed. I was shocked when I noticed the front door wasn't locked. There was no way I was that careless. Pushing the door open, the living room showed signs of a mess. It looked like someone had been rummaging through everything. As I went deeper into the house, I was horrified by the pitiful sight before me. I walked into the bedroom and my whole body went cold. The dresser drawers were open. My underwear was scattered across the bed. Someone had touched my things. I backed out of the room, trying to breathe steadily, and then I remembered the camera. I opened the app on my phone, but the screen showed a message that the memory card could not be found. I ran to the front door and looked up at the camera. The small slot for the memory card was empty. I panicked and quickly called my boyfriend, crying a lot. Jake told me to lock the door carefully and immediately drove over. We gathered the necessary things, and Jake took me to his place right away that night. After hearing my story, Jake was furious. Jake has a bit of a temper, but he's always calculating. He was a lifeguard for 7 years and has been training in martial arts since he was a kid. Jake said he would call the police, but that wasn't enough. Since this guy knew I lived alone, he had entered my house, and he might come back. Jake looked at me and said he had a plan. He's going to pay. Let him come back, but this time, I'll be waiting for him. The plan sounded crazy, but I completely agreed to follow Jake. He would wear my clothes, put on a wig, stay in the house, and wait. I would be in the car, a few hundred yards away, ready to call the police if anything happened. That evening, around 10 p.m., a tall, skinny man was walking from the side of my house. He moved slowly and seemed familiar with every corner. He opened the back door and disappeared inside the house. Everything that happened next was recounted to me by Jake, and I still get chills whenever I think about it. Jake was lying on the bed after disguising himself, covered with a blanket up to his waist. The room only had a dim nightlight. He heard light footsteps from the hallway. Then the bedroom door cracked open. The steps came closer. The breath of a man was warm on the back of his neck. Then the guy hugged Jake from behind. His hand kept stroking sensitive areas and whispering my name. But then he stopped abruptly when he reached down there. Then he continued to touch Jake's shoulder and bicep as if to confirm. Jake turned around in a flash, delivering a punch straight to his face. A loud scream, and the guy staggered back. Jake didn't stop. The continuous strikes didn't give him a chance to fight back, but also ensured no serious damage. A little while later, I got a call from Jake and ran into the house. Jake was holding him tight, with his hands twisted behind his back, face down on the floor. I turned on the lights, and what stunned me was him, the camera technician. He mumbled my name, looked at me with swollen eyes, and uttered a sickening sentence. "Ariana, there you are." I couldn't wait to enjoy all of your body myself. My boyfriend yelled, landed a powerful punch, and ordered him to shut up. I backed away, shaking badly, my hand dialing the police, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. He had been here from the start. From the day he installed the camera, he knew everything about me. At the police station, he confessed everything. His name was Ryan Cole, and he had worked for the security company for 2 years. There had been 5 other victims before me, all women living alone who called for camera installation services. They hadn't reported him because he kept the sensitive videos. He praised the police, saying I was the most beautiful and hottest of all his victims, his voice disturbingly calm. I sat in the waiting room, Jake holding me tight. I couldn't cry, I just felt empty. 3 weeks later, I moved in with Jake in Portland. His apartment is on the 3rd floor, with a security guard and public cameras. The neighbors are also very friendly. For the first few nights after the incident, I couldn't sleep. I remembered the day he came to install the camera. He asked me in a friendly voice, if I lived alone, and I answered everything without being cautious. I had been too careless, without a second thought. Now, whenever a stranger asks me anything, I just smile and ignore them. Always be absolutely careful with everything, especially when you are a woman living alone. Sometimes your innocence and honesty are the very opening for predators to access you. I hope we can all stay safe.
I'm Egan, and my younger brother is Aiden. My younger brother is my only family. The horrifying story happened 20 years ago, when I was 9 years old, and my younger brother was 6. My younger brother and I, like many other children, had a warm family with both parents. But that was just a brief calm before the storm for my younger brother and me. My parents began to have conflicts. It was an issue for adults, so I didn't know the exact cause. We shared a room. When I heard my parents arguing and things being smashed, I held my younger brother tightly. I told Mrs. Ira, our neighbor, about what I had heard and witnessed. She lived alone and was very fond of my younger brother and me. She taught me how to protect myself from the heart-wrenching sounds. My younger brother and I would sit facing each other. I would cover his ears tightly with my hands, and he would do the same for me. My younger brother and I would look at each other, think of happy things, and smile with joy. Mrs. Erica's method was indeed effective, but it seemed to work for my younger brother only, as I could still hear everything very clearly. My younger brother's small hands couldn't block out those heart-wrenching sounds. Many times, I saw my mother with injuries on her face and hands. Every morning when my mother prepared the food, I paid close attention. The injuries increased day by day. My mother was very tired, but never abandoned us. One time, my mother was holding Aiden, but started crying and nearly fell. It seemed like her legs and arms were very painful. I asked many times, but my mother always said she was fine. A few months later, my mother disappeared. My mother left without saying anything and didn't take my younger brother and me with her. My younger brother and I cried a lot because we missed our mother. No one was left to cook us delicious meals and read us stories before bed. Since my mother left, my father became even more irritable, aggressive, and unhappy with everything my younger brother and I did. We were extremely afraid of our father. One night, my younger brother woke up and cried loudly. I was startled awake and tried to comfort him, because if our father heard, my younger brother and I would definitely be in big trouble. "Egan, I want to see Mom. Can we go see her?" My younger brother said this while crying, and I didn't answer. I tried to soothe him so he could go back to sleep. Since our mother left, my father would often take my younger brother and me to Mrs. Erica's house whenever he was away. My younger brother and I really enjoyed the time spent at Mrs. Erica's house. We loved her attention and the delicious meals she cooked. Even when our father came to pick us up, my younger brother cried and refused to go home. One night, I woke up because I was thirsty. I tried to be as quiet as possible and went downstairs to the kitchen to get some water from the fridge. The kitchen light was on, and someone was standing near the fridge. I approached and saw that it was a woman with blonde hair, just like my mother's. Feelings of joy surged within me. I ran over and called out loudly, "Mom!" The woman was startled and turned towards me. She was a complete stranger. She only had the same hair as my mother. "Are you Egan or Aiden?" she asked me with a rather annoyed tone. My father came over, pulled her closer, and ordered me to go back to the bedroom immediately. Terrified, I forgot all about my thirst and ran quickly back to my room. After I saw that woman in the house, my father started sending my younger brother and me to Mrs. Erica's house more frequently. In the afternoon, when Mrs. Erica and we were sitting on the porch, enjoying the cookies she had just baked, "There are noises at night that wake me up. After that, I get scared and cry. I miss Mom." Aiden told Mrs. Erica like that. "Don't be afraid, Aiden. It's just a branch brushing against your window when the wind blows. but there aren't any trees near my window. I quickly explained to Mrs. Erica. It's in the wardrobe. I know it very well. My younger brother continued to talk nervously. I quickly shoved a piece of cookie into his mouth to stop him. She just smiled and opened her arms to hug my younger brother and me. The sound of a car parking in our driveway meant that Dad was home. We were used to the sound of the car and Dad's schedule. Neither of us wanted to go home at all. Hello, Mrs. Erica. Did the kids cause any trouble or inconvenience for you? No, not at all. They are very well behaved and lovely. While Dad checked in with Mrs. Erica, my younger brother and I hurried back home. I looked inside Dad's car and then ran into the house to look around. Once I was sure that the woman was not there, I led my younger brother into the house. That night, my younger brother woke up and cried loudly, constantly calling for Mom. No matter how much I tried to comfort him, my younger brother continued to cry. My father opened the door to the bedroom and shouted, "Why haven't you gone to sleep yet?" My younger brother, even more frightened, cried louder and continued calling for Mom. "Shut up and go to sleep. I don't want to hear any more noise from you." I held my younger brother tightly and covered his ears. "Dad, let Mom go." My younger brother's words made my father, who was turning to leave, freeze in place. "Dad, you've locked Mom in that wardrobe. Let her go." I quickly covered my younger brother's mouth and whispered into his ear with a trembling voice, "This is our secret. You must not tell Dad." I didn't think much more about it and quickly pulled my younger brother's hand, running away. My father easily caught up with us. I bit his hand with all my strength. Suddenly, a loud gunshot rang out and the door flew open. I heard the police. They demanded that my father come out immediately. It was Mrs. Erica who, hearing my younger brother's cries and my father's shouting, called the police. My younger brother and I were taken to a children's care center in the city. I remember it was a long time before we were allowed to visit home again. My father was no longer at home, and the atmosphere was very cold and desolate. When Mrs. Erica called, my younger brother and I joyfully ran to her and hugged her. "Mom has been taken out of there by the police, hasn't she?" Mrs. Erica was stunned when she saw me pointing towards a mound of earth in the garden. I witnessed everything because I was also awake that night to get some water. I knew that Mom had gone to heaven, and I always told my younger brother that. I also didn't ask about Dad because I was very afraid of him. When my younger brother turned 10, he became aware of everything. The hardships we endured made my younger brother and me mature beyond our years. Currently, we have a fulfilling life with good jobs. My younger brother and I visited our father and shared with him our upcoming plans. My brother and I will host the wedding together, and Mrs. Erica will witness that happy day.
I never thought my chill life would one day take such a terrifying turn. It was this gloomy fall day. My parents were out at some conference, and I was home alone, way out near the woods. That evening, I swung by the closest gas station after hanging out at my best friend's place. The dim neon lights made the place feel creepy. There was a guy standing by the gas station while I was filling up my car, his face hidden under a low baseball cap. He had on a bulky, dull brown coat, and I could feel his eyes on me the whole time. As I snapped the gas cap shut, the guy walked up and asked how to get to the interstate. His voice was low, not really threatening, but definitely not friendly either. I gave him directions, being polite but quick about it. As I turned to head out, a chill ran down my spine. Driving home, I noticed a car behind me, its headlights way closer than usual. At first, I figured it was just another car going the same way, but every time I sped up or slowed down, it kept the same exact distance. When I turned onto the dirt road toward home, the car suddenly stopped and its headlights went out. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but all I could see was darkness swallowing everything up. I tried telling myself I was just being paranoid, but the feeling wouldn't go away. That night, in the quiet house, I heard this soft voice, like a whisper on the breeze, calling my name from outside the window. When I looked out, there was nothing but darkness and the trees swaying in the wind. The next day, it got even worse. When I went out to grab something from the car, I could feel a figure hanging back behind the garage wall. I called the police, and when they showed up, they went around with their flashlights, checking the woods and the backyard. But they didn't find anything. One of them told me to stay calm and keep my phone on me, but the look in his eyes said he thought I was making it all up. I knew what I heard was real. Another night, after getting back from work, I heard footsteps crunching on dry leaves and this slow, heavy breathing. I didn't look back. I just bolted straight for the door. But once again, he was gone, like he was never there to begin with. I called my parents, and they told me to go crash at a friend's place until they got back. But stepping out right now felt like asking for trouble. I decided to stay home for the night and pack up so I could head to a friend's house first thing in the morning. As I got out of the car and went into the house, the fear from the past few days hit me all over again. Out of nowhere, someone rushed at me from behind. All I could make out were these cold eyes behind a mask. He yanked my arm hard, and I could feel his hot breath on my neck. Then I felt a sharp pain in my back, like something had stabbed me. In a total panic, I swung my bag as hard as I could and smashed it into his face. It threw him off just long enough for me to jump into the car and lock the doors. I slammed on the gas, my heart racing, so fast I thought it might explode. When I got to my friend's place, I called the police, and they showed up about 10 minutes later at both spots, my house and my friend's. They checked everything around both places, but didn't find a single trace of the guy. It was like he'd vanished into thin air, like he was never even there. For the next few days, I was on edge about everything. Every tiny noise made me jump. What kept me up at night, what wouldn't let me relax, was the one question I couldn't answer. Who was he, and why did he come after me? The fear and the constant feeling of being watched were, like a heavy weight I couldn't shake, in the days that followed. The police still didn't find a single trace of the guy, and all they could say was that maybe I imagined it all because of stress. But I knew what happened was real. I kept hoping my parents would get back soon so I could stop living like this. But then they texted saying something came up at work, and they couldn't come home as planned. I didn't have any other options, so I decided to go back home. That night, while I was in the kitchen, I heard footsteps coming from the attic. I grabbed a kitchen knife and slowly made my way up the stairs. Using my phone flashlight, I swept the attic with the beam. At first, everything looked normal until I saw a dirty mattress, empty food containers, and photos of me taken without me knowing. There were pictures of me at the gas station, on the drive home, and even in my bedroom. I turned around, and there he was. Before I could even react, he came charging at me. In a total panic, I swung the knife. He went down, breathing weakly, then just stopped. I bolted out of the house, called the police, and stood there crying, shaking, and scared out of my mind, with blood all over my hands. When the police got there, they found out he was a wanted criminal who'd been on the run for the past 3 months and had probably been hiding out in my house the whole time. It hit me. He'd been watching me this entire time. It was horrifying, and I completely broke down, sobbing. But what sent chills down my spine even more was when the police checked his phone. They found a video of him talking to my parents. In the video, my parents were standing there with him at the gas station, having a full-on conversation. At first, it looked like they were just talking to some random guy. But then my dad handed him a wad of cash and a map. And then my mom's voice came through, cold and sharp. "Here's the key. Get it done quickly and cleanly." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could they do this? I started shaking, feeling like my whole world just fell apart. The police took all the evidence right away, but they wouldn't say anything about it yet. I begged them to dig deeper, A few days later, they uncovered something absolutely horrifying. My parents were drowning in debt. The guy they hired wasn't just some random criminal. He was a pro, a hitman who'd done cleanup jobs for cash. I wasn't just a random target. He came after me because I was their daughter. It felt like my parents saw me as nothing but a burden, and the life insurance money from me was their way out of debt. That truth cut deeper than anything. The people I trusted and loved the most had turned me into prey. The police started digging deeper into the case, but my parents were gone, just disappeared without a trace. I was left alone with an empty house and the kind of nightmare that sticks with me forever. When it all came out, it shattered me. It felt like every piece of my broken heart was slicing into my soul, leaving a pain I couldn't shake. I used to believe that no matter what, even if the whole world turned its back on me, my parents would always be my safe place. But they were the ones who threw me into hell. I kept asking myself, how could the people who gave me life be so heartless? I packed up whatever I could and walked away from that house, from my past. But the fear didn't go anywhere. Even in the middle of a crowded street in a city where nobody knows me, I still feel it. That invisible gaze, like someone is watching me, making every breath catch in my throat. Every night, I push a chair against the door and keep a knife under my pillow. I don't sleep to rest. I sleep to survive, stuck in a nightmare that never lets go. My name is David. I was born and raised in the suburbs of San Bernardino, California. Our house was an old wooden one, isolated among the deep green pine hills. It was quite spacious with 4 bedrooms and a basement. My father said the basement was where he worked. I was never allowed down there. I accepted this without question. I only observed from a safe distance. I lived with my father, a very quiet man. With his fishing job, he was often away for weeks at a time. Dad didn't spend much time with me. The only thing he taught me was, women only bring trouble. But the contradiction was that our house always had many women visiting. They came and went like ghosts, so many that I couldn't remember them all. When Dad was away, I stayed home with whichever woman was visiting at the time. They rarely spoke to me. Some looked at me with pity, others with coldness. None of them cooked. I usually lived on canned goods and sandwiches. In the winter when I was 7, Bree appeared with long curly brown hair and a warm smile. Dad introduced her as a special friend who would be staying with us. I didn't expect much, but Bree was different. The first morning after she arrived, I woke up to the smell of pancakes and bacon. I was so used to preparing my own breakfast of dry cereal, the aroma confused me. I crept into the kitchen. Bree turned with a bright smile and said, "Good morning, David." It was the first time I had the feeling of a real family meal. Bree sat across from me. She asked about school, about the books I liked. She really listened to my answers. The following months passed peacefully. Bree took me to school and picked me up. She helped me with my homework and cooked amazing meals. Bree's specialty was barbecue with a secret sauce. "This is my exclusive recipe," she would often say, as she poured the dark red sauce over the tender meat. I ate heartily, without any suspicion. The strange thing was that even with Bree staying, other women continued to come. They didn't stay as long as before, usually just a night or two, when my father was home. Bree never spoke about them. Gradually, I stopped paying attention to their comings and goings. To me, Bree was Mom, the only one I needed. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of arguing from the kitchen. For the first time, I heard Bree's voice high and strained. "You knew what you were doing when you came here. Don't act innocent with me." My father's voice was harsh. "But I didn't think things would be like this," Bree retorted. "You want to leave, like the others?" my father asked. Silence stretched, and finally, I heard Bree sob softly. "Number, I can't leave David." "Then you'll do as I say." My father's voice was firm. 2 days later, we had barbecue for dinner again. Bree didn't say much, but she made sure my plate was always full. I ate ravenously, while Bree barely touched her own portion. That night, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs to get a drink. The basement door was slightly ajar, no sound, but there was a strange smell I couldn't place. Curious, I crept closer to the basement stairs. I intended to look down to see what my father did down there in the middle of the night. Suddenly, a gentle hand touched my shoulder. "Go back to bed, David. Your father is working." "We shouldn't disturb him," Bree whispered. Her face was pale and distraught. I nodded and went back to my room. When Bree tucked me in, I noticed her eyes were red and swollen. From that night on, Bree changed. Her smile no longer held any emotion. She grew thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. Sometimes I would catch her staring blankly into space and secretly crying. I started hearing noises at night, not arguing anymore, but strange sounds from the basement. Sometimes it was the clanging of metal and even whimpering. Once I was sure I heard a scream, but it was abruptly cut short. The next day, I saw Bree with a pale face, and after those nights, we would have barbecue for dinner again. I had realized something. Every time a new woman arrived and left, we would have barbecue. My father would seem more cheerful, while Bree wouldn't meet our eyes during the meal. I didn't want to eat those barbecue dinners anymore, but I didn't dare refuse. Bree noticed when my father wasn't looking. She would give me a small nod, allowing me to leave some food on my plate. One day, while I was at school, a police officer and a social worker came to my classroom. They took me to the principal's office and asked me about my father and life at home. I answered cautiously, unsure of what I should say. When they asked about the women, I froze. I repeated what my father had always told me. They were friends visiting. "What about Bree?" the police officer asked. "Bree is my foster mom." The two officers exchanged a look. Then they said they would take me home. When we arrived, several police cars were parked in front of the house. Bree stood on the porch, her face streaked with tears. When she saw me, she ran and hugged me tightly. Before I could understand what was happening, I saw my father being led out of the house. He was wearing handcuffs, his eyes looking down at the ground, empty and emotionless. I heard a police officer say they had to call for more units. There were over 50 bodies down there. Everything after that became a blur. I remember someone putting me in a car, Bree begging to come with me. I looked out the window as men in protective suits went in and out of the basement. They were carrying large black bags. That sentence kept echoing in my head as a police officer explained that my father had murdered at least 50 women. He had butchered their bodies, taking what he considered the best parts. The barbecue dinners, they all flashed through my mind with horrifying clarity. I vomited until there was nothing left. Painful contractions and choked sobs overwhelmed me. Bree had helped my father. She had cooked those meals. But she had also called the police. The following years passed in a series of foster homes and mental health facilities. I didn't speak for almost a year, unable to eat meat. My father was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bree was sentenced to 20 years in prison for her role as an accomplice, although she had cooperated with the police. I never visited either of them. Now, I'm 28 years old and trying to build a normal life. I have a small apartment in Sacramento, a job at the local library. I don't have nightmares as often as I used to, but they still come. In those dreams, I always see myself as a 10-year-old boy sitting at the dining table. I stare at a steaming plate of barbecue. My father smiles encouragingly. Bree stands behind me, tears streaming down her face. And from the basement, I hear the cries of nameless women. I am James, a student at FSU, Florida. My family lives far away in Gruene, Texas, so I only go home during long breaks and on important holidays. I don't have any siblings. All of my parents' love and attention are focused on me. Each time I return, My parents are always joyful and happy. Everything was peaceful until the horrifying event that happened in the summer after I completed my first year at university. I joyfully hugged my parents, taking a deep breath of the familiar and peaceful air of home. The next day, I helped my dad clean up the backyard garden as I had promised. My family has a fairly large backyard, and when I was younger, I used to invite my friends over to camp overnight. After many years of neglect, my dad decided to clean it up and build a shed there. Thanks to my dad's plan, I was overjoyed to rediscover my treasure after many years of being forgotten. The treehouse on the large oak tree, that was the birthday gift my dad had carefully prepared for me when I turned 9. A feeling of nostalgia rose in my heart, as if a part of my memory that had been buried in the past suddenly awakened. Each crack, each loose piece of wood seemed to remind me of a time long past, the days when I was a child, running around here, laughing and playing with my friends. I used to be so happy and proud to own it. From that day on, I visited the treehouse every day, cleaning up, reinforcing the rotting stairs, and fixing the cracks caused by rain and wind. One evening, my parents went to a party at Uncle Jim's house, a longtime friend of our family. Since I wasn't feeling well, I declined to attend. While my parents were away, I decided to visit the treehouse once again, as a way to find some peace and reconnect with a forgotten memory. The dim light from the street lamp cast a faint glow onto the backyard where the treehouse stood. The house seemed like a silent ghost, old and worn, with its gray roof fading over the years. Despite that, it still stood strong, as if waiting for me to return. I walked across the yard, my heart filled with mixed emotions, each step bringing me closer to my childhood days. I shuddered slightly, but didn't think much of it. I pulled the ladder up and climbed into the house. The space inside was cold and still. The old walls and the dusty bookshelf made me feel like I had just stepped through a time portal. I sat down on the old chair, trying to enjoy the peaceful feeling, but suddenly, a faint noise from outside startled me. I stood up, walked to the small window, and looked out into the backyard. 2 figures were sneaking up toward my parents' house. The streaks of light from the street lamps cutting through the darkness made me realize they were holding guns. A wave of fear spread throughout my body, and I quickly pulled my phone from my pocket and called the police. But unfortunately, one of them noticed me, probably because I had spoken quite loudly in my fear. One of them shouted loudly, and without waiting for me to respond, he began heading toward the wooden house. In that moment, everything seemed to collapse. My heart raced, and my throat tightened. I meant to run, but I didn't have time. They were already very close, gripping their guns tightly and aiming them at me. In a moment of panic, an idea suddenly came to me. I rushed out the front door, and with all the strength I could muster, I pulled up the wooden ladder, at least cutting off their only way up. I shut the door and windows of the treehouse tightly, barricading myself inside, hoping the police would arrive soon. Luckily, my father had been very careful and meticulous when securing the locks on the house. When I heard the crunching footsteps outside the treehouse, the anxiety within me immediately turned into panic. A suffocating feeling spread through my body, and each breath seemed to make the air around me even more stifling. The feeling of fear spread like a wave, with every sound making me jump. The first gunshot rang out, a deafening blast that made my heart skip a beat, and I almost collapsed. The next gunshot rang out closer, followed by a series of bullets embedding into the wooden body of the house. One of them slipped through a rotten gap I hadn't had a chance to fix. I backed into the corner of the room, trying to stay calm, but the truth was, there was nowhere to hide. The house was too small and fragile. The 2 thieves continued to shout, curse, and threatened relentlessly. The sound of police sirens in the distance brought a sense of hope, but a part of me still didn't dare to breathe. The two thieves shouted curses before leaving. It took me quite a while to calm down and finally leave the treehouse. It was then that I called my parents. They returned in a panic and hugged me tightly. After more than 2 hours of playing hide and seek with the police, the two thieves were finally caught. Luckily, it only took me a few days for my mind to truly stabilize. The first thing I did was help my dad repair the treehouse. It was a beautiful part of my childhood memory, and also my savior in the moment I faced danger. This happened about 5 years ago during winter break. I was only 15 years old then. I was hosting a sleepover at my house with 5 of my best friends: Ethan, Liam, Aiden, Oliver, and Ben. We had all known each other since we were little kids. My parents were away for a few days, so Oliver's uncle Nathan came to watch us. Nathan was a funny and laid-back guy. We felt totally safe with him around. Nathan was professionally trained in martial arts and even coached MMA fighters. My family also owned 2 large bulldogs. What's better than doing whatever you want with your closest friends during winter break? Everyone arrived that afternoon, just as it was getting dark. It was typical winter weather, with heavy rain and a gloomy sky. The rain was pouring down, and the thunder sounded louder than usual. Nathan ordered pizza for the group, and we decided to watch a horror movie, as the stormy weather created the perfect atmosphere. We were halfway through the movie when the doorbell rang. Everyone guessed it was the pizza delivery guy, and Nathan went to open the door. Nathan looked through the peephole and saw the delivery guy. As Nathan described it, the man was about 6 feet tall and had a strange, unsettling expression. Nathan said the guy immediately gave him a bad vibe. Nathan opened the door, and the man handed over the pizza, but didn't say a single word, just gave a long, creepy smile. Nathan paid and quickly shut the door. Afterward, he told us it was one of the most awkward moments of his life. He had to just stand there while the man silently grinned at him. Even though we felt something was off, we tried to ignore it and kept watching the movie. By the time the movie ended, it was close to midnight. We decided to sleep together in the large living room upstairs. Aiden and I slept on the bed, and the others set up sleeping bags around us on the floor. Nathan stayed downstairs watching his favorite movie on the sofa. After about 30 minutes of talking, everyone gradually drifted off to sleep. I don't know how much time passed, but suddenly, Aiden was shaking my shoulder. His face looked worried and he whispered, "Do you hear that?" I listened closely, and there was a tapping noise coming from the window. At first I thought it was thunder, but then Aiden leaned in and said, "I think someone is trying to break in." My heart started pounding fast, and we stared at the window, completely paralyzed with fear. The tapping stopped. After the tapping stopped, a dark silhouette appeared right on the window glass. The person was wearing a hoodie, and I couldn't clearly see their face. I jumped off the bed and ran to the window, locking it quickly just as the guy tried to open it. Right at that moment, he smiled in a very unsettling and terrifying way. I only saw his distinct white teeth. The rest of his face was obscured. Aiden and I quickly woke everyone up. Then, the tapping returned, louder and more aggressive. He started yelling something, but we didn't pay much attention. The whole group ran straight downstairs to wake up Nathan. Nathan didn't hesitate at all. He went to open the dog's crate and led them straight outside. Aiden and I followed him, and the others huddled by the door. The sight we saw was terrifying. A ladder was leaning against the side of the house, placed right under the bedroom window. It turned out the tapping sound earlier was the ladder hitting the wall as the man climbed up. Nathan spotted muddy footprints leading to the backyard, and ran toward the bushes. We saw the man crouching down under a bush in the garden, trying to hide. Nathan rushed in, the two dogs barking loudly beside him, and they lunged, biting the man's jacket. While the man was struggling with the two dogs, Nathan seized the opportunity and quickly threw a hard punch at his face. He yelled back at us, "Call the police!" It took the police a while to arrive because of the storm. The man was quickly arrested. The final detail that still haunts me is when the police officer said this wasn't the first time this man had engaged in such behavior. But the most terrifying thing was when Nathan swore that he was the same man who delivered our pizza that night. I still remember that creepy smile, and now I understand it wasn't the smile of an awkward delivery guy. It was the smile of someone who was planning something. Every time I think about what could have happened if Aiden hadn't woken up in time, or if Nathan hadn't been there, or if we didn't have the two dogs, I get goosebumps all over. I learned a very important lesson from this experience, that sometimes our intuition isn't meaningless. It's a warning we can't ignore. We felt the strangeness from the pizza guy, the signs of trouble right when he showed up, but we didn't act on it immediately. However, luckily, we still recognized the danger before it was too late.
We've only been in this new house for a few months now. The house is out on the edge of town, not many people around, and there aren't a lot of amenities. But the air is really fresh. My room's on the first floor, near the living room, and my parents are upstairs. I picked this room because it's got a big window that looks out over the lake behind the house. I always leave the window open, and the breeze brings in the smell of flowers and grass, which makes me love the room even more. One night, I was up on my phone with my dog until after 2 a.m. I was watching a funny video and laughing when Pop suddenly jumped off the bed, ran to the window, and started barking like crazy. I jumped up and tried to get Pop to stop, or else my parents would wake up and realize I was still up, and they'd take my phone away. "Pop, stop it right now!" I growled, but I barely whispered. At first I thought Pop was barking at his reflection in the window on the left. But when I looked again, Pop was staring angrily at the right side of the window. I took a closer look, and it was like a jolt of electricity went through me. Outside the window, a pair of blue eyes were staring right at me. It took me a few seconds to process it all, and I tried to act like everything was normal. I signaled Pop to be quiet, picked up the glass of water, and pretended it was empty. I slowly got out of bed and opened the door and went to the kitchen to get some water. "Pop, let's go get some water. You like snacks, don't you?" I swear, I had to keep my fear in check just to sound as normal as possible. I didn't even have time to worry about whether Pop was following me or not. I just rushed up to the second floor. I knocked on my parents' door over and over, freaking out and saying someone was lurking outside, probably a thief. "Calm down, Michael. I set up a sensor light. If there's any movement, the light will turn on." Dad was lying on the bed, sounding pretty calm as he answered me in a sleepy voice. When my mom heard my dad's explanation, her face relaxed too, and she let out a big sigh of relief. "Why aren't you asleep yet, Michael?" Mom suddenly switched her attitude and expression. I was startled and said, "I was thirsty, so I went to get some water. Good night, Mom and Dad." I quickly left. When I got back to the room, Pop was still sitting there, intently watching out the window. I went over and patted his head, saying, "It's nothing, buddy. Let's go to sleep." Looking out the window, everything seemed normal. I must have just been seeing things earlier. Pop was still sitting there, and I just went to bed and fell asleep pretty quickly. The next few days were normal, and I kept leaving the window open, just like before. I officially started summer vacation and planned to make a bunch of great memories with my parents and Pop in the new house. With my dad's okay, I'd often swim with Pop in the lake behind the house every afternoon. A few times I invited friends over to camp by the lake overnight, and everything went great. About 2 weeks into the vacation, one night, I stayed up late playing games with my friends. Suddenly, Pop's growling got my attention. He looked toward the window again, his eyes angry, showing his teeth and growling like he was ready to fight at any moment. I took off my headphones and said, "Pop, what's wrong this time?" I don't know why my heart was racing so fast at that moment. I looked towards the window and saw a pair of blue eyes. I stared carefully and kept looking back multiple times. But it was pretty dark outside, so I wasn't sure if I was seeing things correctly. I didn't dare to stand up and check, imagining that something terrible might happen to me. I felt pretty confident because I remembered what my dad said, but I was curious about Pop's reaction. "Michael, are you playing games again?" Mom's voice startled both me and Pop. I didn't answer because I heard noises coming from outside. Looking out the window, I was shocked to see a black shadow moving toward the lake. Pop lost it and started barking loudly. "Michael, I know what you're up to. Open the door now." I looked away from the window for a few seconds, and when I looked back, the black shadow had disappeared. I rushed to the window and looked around, but there was no one there. Mom's knocking got more and more urgent, so I ran to open the door and got a tongue lashing. But I couldn't focus on what my mom was saying, as I kept glancing toward the window, and the shadow of that creature seemed to linger in my mind. The next morning, I went to find my dad and told him everything with a real serious look. My dad was skeptical about what I said, so he decided to check the sensor light, and it had been broken for a while. The thought of some weird creature following me so many times really shook me up. I went into detail with my parents about its eyes and appearance, and how it suddenly vanished near the lake. "Is it possible you were just hallucinating because you stayed up too late playing games, Michael?" Mom's question made my dad hesitate and look at me with a questioning look. "But Pop, how could a dog's senses be wrong?" I immediately argued back, and my parents just looked at each other in silence and didn't say anything more. From that day on, I kept the windows shut and the curtains drawn all the time. My dad also installed a bunch of sensor lights and alarm bells around the house, just like I wanted. But I still couldn't relax and ended up dealing with constant insomnia. Seeing that my physical and mental health was getting worse, my parents took me to see a psychologist. The police also came by several times at night to search the house, but they didn't find anything unusual. One day, I suggested to my parents that we move to a different place. That same day, the local news reported that they'd finally arrested a thief who had been on the run for months. He'd committed a total of 36 robberies, and what stood out to me were his striking blue eyes. My parents thought it was very likely that I had seen him, but I still wasn't completely satisfied and didn't feel fully reassured. Following my wishes again, my parents decided to fill in the pond behind the house and build a big warehouse. While draining the pond, they found a bag and a mask that thieves often use. So, he probably jumped into the pond to escape that night. Since the pond wasn't very deep and he was tall, it makes sense he could have done that. I slept better in